Good afternoon, or evening, whatever time it is for you. This is Jonathan with Steel Bear Academy, coming at you with another video. Today we're going to be talking about some of the most common types of revolvers. So this is a comparison between the Smith Wesson 686 and the Smith Wesson Model 66. Now they're both very similar, but they've got some key differences. And as you can see, I have both of them, so if you are curious, the long short answer, should I get either? Either of them are good. I like them both, and I bought them both. So let's start off by some of the differences. So this is the 66. These guns have all been safety checked. You can take a look with me here. Empty cylinders. So the 66 is called a K-frame Smith & Wesson revolver. That basically just means that it's the medium-size frame. It's a little smaller than the 686, which is called an L frame. It's just a little larger. The big difference between these two frame sizes is that with the K frame, you can only have 6 rounds of .357 Magnum. With the L frame, you can have up to 7. So you have a 6-shooter, as they call it, with 7 rounds. Pretty cool, right? That's probably the main advantage of the L frame. To give you a little bit of history, the original frame, the frame that came first, was the K frame. It existed beforehand. It was kind of the first kind of downsized .357 Magnum revolver. And what they discovered was that this frame size couldn't contain or regularly use .357 Magnum without having some damages. I've heard differing opinions on whether or not this was actually true, but that is the common that was the common belief at the time. I don't know how verifiable it is, because people have a couple problems and then they tell a friend and they tell a friend and so on. It becomes a huge issue. But I never had one of those revolvers, and from what I hear, people shot .357 Magnum in them fairly often enough that they didn't seem to have a problem. But we're getting kind of off topic. The K-frames nowadays do not have that problem. I'll show you why. So the 686, or the L frame, was kind of created in response to the problems of the K-frame, meaning it couldn't handle the full power Magnum loads, .357 Magnum loads, that were supposedly damaging this gun, this size of gun. So what they responded with was basically beefing up the gun in such a way so that it allowed them to have a full power, entirely strong forcing cone, which is that little metal piece right there. It basically is the thing that the bullet enters into when it jumps the gap between the cylinders, which can move freely, so they need a little bit of gap, that cylinder gap. So the forcing cone took a lot of heat and a lot of pressure. The smaller gun supposedly couldn't handle that. So that's why they came out with this L frame. And this gun definitely can handle .357 Magnum. It's even a little bit overbuilt in some ways for the Magnums nowadays. Back in the day, perhaps they didn't have as great a metallurgy. But the K-frames nowadays are built in such a way so that they can have that full forcing cone without any cutouts on the bottom. That was kind of there was a redesign of this size so that they used the ball detent up here instead of locking on the top of the ejection rod here. Minor things. Basically, all you need to know is that the K-frames of nowadays are strong enough to handle the Magnums, whereas the K-frames of yesterday's potentially may not have been able to handle them over long periods of time with repeated use. However, I don't know how many people are actually putting that many Magnums through their guns anyway. Most people tend to shoot .38 specials most of the time. It's kind of expensive to shoot that many Magnums, even if you reload. So that's the kind of the big differences. The frame size, it's overall just a little smaller. So even though this is a 6-inch barreled gun, and this is a 2 3/4-inch barreled gun, the size of the frame, the size of this dimension here, is a little bit different, and the K-frame definitely has a different feel in the hand. Feels like it balances a little bit better for me, but the L-frame feels good in my hands too. The long barrel of this gun definitely changes the weight characteristics of it, but it makes it a very nice gun to shoot. Very, very pleasant to shoot. Even Magnum, full power Magnum loads out of this gun. And 38s, low powered 38s feel like you're shooting at 22 or even less. Feels like almost nothing. If you didn't know, both of these guns are chambered for the 357 Magnum, which is this gun. So they both say on the side 357 Magnum, right there. However, if you did not know, any gun that is chambered, any revolver that is chambered in the 357 Magnum can also chamber and shoot the shorter 38 Special. So I'm not sure if you can see it from there, but this is the Magnum on the side, on the right side, on my right, your left, and this one over here is the Special. So you can see that the shiny silver part, the casing, is just a little bit shorter. And so you can chamber the longer one in any gun chambered for 357 Magnum. However, if you had a gun chambered in 38 Special, you would not be able to shoot the Magnum in that gun. So with a 357 Magnum, you get the option of shooting both. Why would you want that? Well, the 38 Special has much lower recoil, and it's also usually cost less. So you can kind of practice with this one more easily and less fatiguingly, meaning the more powerful Magnum is kind of more fatiguing to shoot. You can't shoot it as much. You can shoot 38 Specials all day very easily. They're very pleasant to shoot. They don't have a lot of recoil. And you also save a little bit on the economy side of it. With the gun came some different grips. So these are the original grips that these two guns came with. You see they are very similar. They're kind of a semi-hard rubber. They're not the Hogue material, which is kind of tacky rubber. These are more like semi-tacky, if I would say. I'm not sure exactly the words to describe them, but this was the 686s, and this was the 66s. I think that this grip can come on the larger barrel lengths of the 66. There's only one larger barrel length, 4-inch, which I would say is by far the most common full-size barrel length. The 6-inch it's common too, but it's far less. People seem to choose it far less. And I'll tell you, I didn't really choose it out of necessity. I didn't choose it out of because I specifically wanted the 6-inch. If I had had the option of a 4-inch, I probably would have bought another 4-inch. I used to have a 4-inch 686 and I really liked it. I changed out that gun to a different gun, but I ended up getting another 686. And the 6-inch, it's quite heavy. So when I first brought this gun home, I was like, this is fun, I'm gonna enjoy swinging it around and getting kind of a feel for it. And you got to be careful with a gun with this much weight on the end here, because I was kind of moving it around and it kind of tweaked my wrist a little bit just to move it around like this. I've gotten used to it and compensate for it now, but if you're not someone with really strong wrists, that extra weight in the front can be potentially a downside for you. But that extra weight in the front also makes it a dream to shoot. So there's pros and cons. Getting back to those grips, they both feel pretty good in the hands. I don't really have any complaints about these grips. I think they are just a little less flashy for what I wanted. So I tried out these VZ grips on the 66. So this was the original. It's got a little bit of a curve down here. This gun is really made more for concealed carry because it's got the shorter barrel, 2 3/4 inch barrel. The grips that I have on here now, you see that all these guns have an exposed backstrap here. This metal piece here, which is the frame, it's exposed. These grips covered the backstrap. This one does not. Anytime you cover the backstrap, you're gonna have less felt recoil. So these ones actually will absorb more recoil than having the exposed backstrap. I've had some other Hogue grips. So there's actually several Hogue grips that you can buy for either of these guns. These grips actually both fit each other. The K frame and the L frame have totally interchangeable grips, which is nice. This is a Hogue grip that has the exposed backstrap, and it's got the round butt. So both of these guns are called round butt, meaning their frame kind of tapers down and then rounds at the bottom, as opposed to the older style, which is called a square butt. It kind of started here and goes kind of straight down. Minor things. It just basically means that you have to make sure you select the right grip for the gun that you have. The newer ones are all round butt grips. The older ones, so you see how it kind of has that little extra space right there? It just means that it kind of curves in. So again, there's different Hogue grips for this gun, for both guns. This one I actually really like the feel of. It's kind of like a tapered, it kind of tapers, kind of like it's meant to be concealed, but for me, this one feels really good in hand. There's also another Hogue grip that covers the backstrap completely. That one felt very nice to shoot. However, it was kind of it kind of made it hard for me to pull the trigger easily. This is something that's kind of important. Well, it's actually really important for any gun, but especially for a double action gun, meaning these guns are all double action, single action revolvers, meaning when you pull the trigger, so these guns have all been safety checked, but let's check it again just to make sure. Looks good to me. So when you pull the trigger, it's going to cock the hammer and it's going to drop the hammer. So it performs two actions, double action. It also has the ability to be cocked, the hammer back here has the ability to be cocked for a single action shot. And then your trigger performs one action, dropping the hammer, a single action. So this gun works the exact same way. When you have a double action trigger, you want to make sure that your hands fit it in such a way so that you can easily have your finger right where you want it to be, right on that kind of juncture right there, or right up until the kind of the middle part of your first pad of your finger. So anywhere between that middle pad and that first joint is really where you want it. The closer you have it to this joint, the more leverage and power you'll have, but you might not have as great of control, let's say. So it's important to make sure these revolvers fit your hands, and grips can definitely play a big part in that. If you feel like you couldn't reach the trigger with this extra little bit of material on the backstrap, then getting ones without that backstrap, or with the exposed backstrap, might change the feel of the trigger for you in quite a big way. So for me, this one lines up just right where I want it, kind of on that first joint. With the heavier double action pulls, you might need a little more leverage, so you might end up holding it in such a way that gets you more leverage, meaning gets you more on that first knuckle. Let's talk about the different barrel lengths these are offered in. So let's start with this gun. This gun only comes in 2 barrel lengths because it's kind of a remake of an older gun. It only comes in 2. This barrel length, 2 3/4 inch, or it comes in 4 inch. And again, 4 inch is by far the most common, I think, of revolvers. It kind of hits that nice sweet spot where it's large enough to make it very pleasant to shoot full power magnum loads, but also it is possible to concealed carry it. So I say possible because it's still a heavy gun. We'll get into the weight in a second. The 686, this one comes in a bunch of different barrel lengths. So it comes in 2.5 inch, which is kind of like a snubby revolver. It comes in 3 inch, comes in 4 inch, let's say about there. Comes in 5 inch, comes in 6 inch, obviously. And it also comes in 7 inch. So you can imagine having an extra inch of barrel on there would be quite weighty. So why do you pick the different barrel lengths? Well, it really comes down to your intent for how you want to use it. If you want a target gun or a hunting gun where you don't really care about concealing it in any way, then the shorter barrel ones are more concealable. Additionally, if you want it to be lighter, it's going to be if it needs to be lighter, it's going to have a shorter barrel. Getting into weight, this gun here has a weight of 44.9 ounces. This gun has a weight of 33.5, so 11.4 ounces different, and it's definitely noticeable. Aside from just the leverage point of having that long barrel, it definitely, this gun is carryable. This gun is quite a bit heavier, but they fulfill different roles. So if you wanted to get this gun and you wanted to carry this type of gun as your defensive gun, you'd probably want to get the shorter one, either 2.5 inch or 3 inch, 4 inch if you want to. Let's talk about the carryability. So both of these guns are, if you picked a carryable model of the 686, I think it would be very carryable. With a good belt, you need something to support that weight, but you could do it for sure. I don't know if it'd be my first choice. I often find myself not choosing to carry this gun, even though this is one of my carry guns, because I don't feel the desire to carry the weight for the amount of ammo the amount of capacity that it has. You know, it only holds 6 rounds, and I can carry a Glock 17 that holds a lot more rounds, almost triple without even having another magazine. So actually it does carry triple. Yeah, carries triple the rounds. It holds 18 rounds, 17 in the magazine plus 1 in the chamber. This one can hold 7. If you were deciding to carry these guns over the, let's say, the polymer framed 9mm 40 Smith Wesson guns, magazine fed semi-autos basically, you're probably choosing these because you're either more comfortable with the revolver, the format, double action, single action revolvers. You might prefer, let's say, the greater reliability of the revolver. Reliability is kind of becoming less and less of a important point. However, these guns are very reliable so long as you keep them clean. So they can have problems. I've had revolvers be unable to move, and it's usually because they get dirty. So if you shoot a lot of 38 specials, you can get kind of crud built around the front of the cylinder. You can get crud built up underneath the ejection star here. And so you got to make sure you keep these clean. They are less forgiving of being dirty than, let's say, a Glock or a Smith & Wesson M&P, a CZ, I forget what it's called, the new one, the one that's kind of like a Glock 17 or a Glock 19. Same thing with the bigger one. You got to make sure you keep them clean underneath the ejection star right here. You gotta make sure you keep them clean under there. Make sure no crud gets under there, and you gotta make sure you keep them clean on the front here. So they're a little bit more finicky. However, if you keep them clean, they have the benefit of being more reliable in some ways. Like if you're shooting, let's say you got 6 shots in here and you're pulling the trigger, you get a bang, bang, and then you get a click, click, nothing fired. Well, if you're in a hurry and you need that next round right now, you just pull the trigger again and you load a new round into you ready the next round and you fire the next round. On a semi-auto, if you get a click when you expect a bang, you're gonna have to get that round out of the chamber by racking the slide. You're more prone to messing it up, and you can make some mistakes and you might end up with a bigger jam than you had anticipated. So that's where the extra reliability comes in. I would say that benefit is getting less and less as time goes on, because semi-autos are becoming more and more reliable. However, some people really like having that extra reliability. They also have some unique advantages in terms of their ability to operate in confined spaces. So a revolver needs to be, you have to be able to let the cylinder move in order for you to fire it. The cylinder has to be able to move. If you hold the cylinder, you can't pull the trigger. Make sense? On a semi-auto, your slide has to be able to reciprocate, meaning go back and forth. If something is impeding that slide from going back and forth, it won't fire, it'll fire, but it won't cycle. It won't eject a spent round, load a new round. Your main benefit of the semi-auto is that it can fire more rounds more quickly without needing to reload. And yeah, so this gun can operate in kind of some specific confined spaces better. Just something to think about. I don't really find it it's not a big plus for me, but some people really like that. I think another reason people choose to carry a revolver is they just like it. Maybe they just have always grown up shooting them and they just like that type of gun. There also might be some people who just shoot it better for whatever reason. I find that revolvers are more challenging to shoot than most semi-autos. However, I could definitely see some people just really gravitating toward the revolver. Perhaps not because of a mechanical advantage of the revolver, but more of like a psychological advantage. They just feel more comfortable shooting it and therefore they shoot it better. That can also happen. Let's talk about the sights. So most Smith Wesson revolvers will either come with the sights like this, where they've got kind of an adjustable rear sight and then a ramp with a red insert on the front sight. Both these guns come with the same sights basically. Or they might come with a gutter sight where they don't have this adjustable rear sight. It just kind of has a groove in the back and it's not adjustable. That is less common, but on the J-frame revolvers, meaning the smaller ones than this one, that can be more common. It's probably more common in general. You can get revolvers in various sighting systems, but these sights are they're very good. I don't really have any complaints about these. The only thing I would say that they're a little challenging in is that they kind of have a very narrow window of usability. So what I mean by that is when you got that gun out there and you're looking down the sights, it's a very fine sight. And so it's not the fastest to pick up. Oftentimes I find myself holding the revolver out there looking for that, finding right there. They're not as easy to pick up as 3 dots or many of the common semi-auto sights that are less precise but easier to pick up. But they're very nice in terms of when you actually do see them and you lock them in, you can pull the trigger and it usually produces some really good results downrange. So that's just something to think about. Let's talk about the trigger pull. So both of these guns, as I pointed out, they're double action, single action. The double action on every double action gun is going to be quite a bit heavier, which we kind of talked about where you put your trigger on the joint of your finger. When I'm pulling this, I find that I find it to be very smooth, meaning it doesn't kind of have different like levels where it kind of jumps in between weight and jumps in between feels. Once I've applied enough pressure, enough poundage of weight to pull the trigger, I find it smoothly transitions to pulling the trigger. Some guns, you can kind of try to stage it where you pull the trigger slightly and then kind of have it right at the very end. This gun is not as easy to do as, let's say, a Ruger GP100. That gun is very, very stageable. It has some very clear stages, and then at that kind of right at that last part, right where the hammer is about to drop, like right here, I'm staging it, and then that last little bit, pulls through. You can do that easier on other revolvers. This one is not the easiest to do. The single action is almost always going to be super, super light, meaning you basically just apply a little bit of pressure and it drops the hammer. And this is a very nice single action, very easy to shoot this accurately. On the 686, it's the same way. Very nice, I like it. Single action. Feels lighter. It feels a little lighter than the 66. However, they are both very nice. I would say this 686 has a little bit nicer of a trigger than the 66. That might just be this particular gun, could be. It might be that when you downsize the gun, maybe it has some differences. It might also be that this is kind of a newer design, whereas the 686 is kind of an older design, and it might use some different, different geometry or something, some different trigger geometry. The trigger and the hammer and all that, the internals might be made of different materials. I really couldn't say exactly why, but just from my own subjective opinion of that, I think the 686 has a nicer trigger. But the 66 is very good too. And really a trigger is only really serves to help you hit the target, right? So if it works, if you can hit the target, then the trigger it works. You don't get bonus points if you subjectively like the trigger better. You only get bonus points if you hit the target better, if that makes sense. Something we didn't talk about yet is the key lock. So most modern Smith & Wesson revolvers, meaning ones that are produced today, have this little lock right here. And it's kind of an eyesore. I don't prefer having it there. Basically what it does is it allows you to take a little key that comes in the box here, and you can turn it and it'll pop a little flag up right to the side of the trigger here. Or sorry, not the trigger, the hammer. And it makes it so that the hammer cannot come back. What that means is your gun is inoperable. It's kind of like a safety measure, kind of. You can't really depend on it because you can easily disable it with the key, but it is there. It's something, I suppose, if you're interested in having a safety on your gun that is kind of like a temporary reversible built-in safety. I can't really justify me wanting one of those when I could just use a cable lock and, stick a cable lock through any of those cylinders and lock it. To me, that does the same thing, but I wasn't the one who designed this thing. But however, if you don't want that cylinder lock on, if you don't want that key lock on there, it is a very easy process to remove the locking device inside of the gun. So this gun doesn't have the locking device in it anymore. So even if I had a hole right here, even if I took this gun and removed the locking device, the key would not do anything. You could turn it, but it doesn't engage anything. And so you can disable that if you want to. It's quite questionable on whether or not that's a good idea. We won't get into that today, but in terms of the legal dangers of it, could it come back to bite you? Short answer, I think, is yes, it could. Longer answer will have to be another day. So you do so at your own risk. I don't recommend you do that. However, you see that I did it. So don't listen to me. I'm just a guy, right? In this case, I'm not going to suggest you do or don't do it, but it is something you can do. You can also see that on this gun, I put a little, it's called a lock delete kit on there. So it kind of has a little plug that kind of holds that, it plugs that spot. And to me, it looks, so much better. It looks so much better to not have that hole there. But that's just me. I have the option of doing that to this gun, and I have elected to not do that. I'm just going to deal with it. I don't particularly like the key lock, but I like the Smith & Wesson revolver so much that I'm just going to have to deal with it. So it's kind of been a comparison between these two guns. As I said right from the get-go, they're both fantastic, and I think if you get either of them, you'll be very, very happy. I got both of them. I love them both. This gun is far more pleasant to shoot at the range with the magnum loads. Oh, I didn't mention one thing. We'll kind of get one final thought on this. When you have more barrel length, it increases the shootability of your gun, not just in the amount of recoil you have, but also the ease of keeping your gun on target when you're pulling the trigger. So what I mean by that is a lighter gun will tend to move more while you're pulling the trigger. Your hands just tend to move more. The heavier gun, even though it is more fatiguing to hold out there, it should, in theory, keep your sights more aligned, because little vibrations in you, meaning your hands, will create less of a effect on moving the sights of the heavier gun. Additionally, because you have a longer sight radius on these longer barreled guns, it's going to be easier for you to perceive with your eyes smaller variations of, like, improperly aligning the sights. So that's another benefit. I'll talk about this some other time, but basically the longer your sight radius, the longer the distance between the rear sight and the front sight, the easier it will be to shoot that gun accurately. It doesn't affect the inherent accuracy of the gun, meaning the mechanical accuracy. The bullets will leave the barrel just the same, regardless of whether you have the longer barrel or the shorter barrel. In terms of their, let's say, straight shooting, keeping the bullet shooting straight, let's say, the velocity obviously changes, but it's really more of a matter of your ability to visually see the sights and connect with the target with the longer barrel. So that's why these are more for target. This is more of a target gun or a hunting gun. This gun gives up that advantage in favor of concealability, if that makes sense. The shorter barrel makes it more concealable, but it's harder to shoot. But you can shoot both pretty well. For its intended purpose, this is perfectly accurate. It's far more accurate than I can shoot it. And this gun is very easy to shoot at a distance of up to 100 yards. You could easily do it. So that's my final thoughts. I like both of them. And if you're interested in getting either of these, I'd say more power to you. Go out and find one. I think you'll be very happy that you did. So, as always, this is Steel Bear Academy. I'm Jonathan. If you're looking for any firearms training in the San Luis Obispo County area, you can give us a call. You can reach us on our website at steelbearacademy.com. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.